So welcome to TechnoDadLife, where we build, learn, and create as a community. And so we have a special treat today. And so this is Dockstarter. And so Dockstarter, well, maybe I'll put a little context in here. So probably you, like me, are sort of the computer guru for your family and friends. Maybe you have a job doing it. But we're setting up machines and doing things and just sort of troubleshooting things. But setup takes a long time usually. And so the idea of Dockstarter is to solve that problem. And so Dockstarter basically will quickly and automatically install a bunch of Dockers for you so you don't have to do a lot of the setup. It still takes a little work, but definitely less time than, say, doing them all individually if you do it the right way. And so if you like this video today, make sure you like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. And here we go now. And a special thank you to all my patrons, who without your support, this channel would not be possible. And if you haven't already, please think about becoming a patron and supporting the channel you love. Okay, so before we get started, I'll just preview a few things that are coming up. So one is I have a 4-port network card. And so this is going to be for our router that we're going to be building. And we're going to try out pfSense, though we may look into other things. And so next what we're going to be doing is building a server rack, and we're going to start putting all our equipment in a server rack. So we'll be doing some home lab stuff. And so basically my idea is that I want to be able to access my computer from anywhere in the world. Say I go on vacation, or I'm on a trip, or I live someplace else, you never know. But the idea is that we set everything up so then everything is self-hosted. And so when I say self-hosted, we have our documents, our photos, our movies, our passwords. So basically everything that we would normally do on the cloud, I would create my own self-hosted cloud. So today what we're going to be doing is installing Dockstarter. And so Dockstarter sort of automatically installs most Dockers, though some need a little extra tweaking after they're already put up. If we scroll down, all we really need is this section right here. And so for us, we really need just the 3 commands, but we have to do some preparation before that in order to get those to work. So let's go to Openmediavault, and let's take a quick peek to make sure your settings are correct for this to work, because there are things have to be set up correctly in order for it to work. Trust me, I've tried to do this about 20 times so far, and it's very particular about how things put together. But once things are put together right, then pretty much everything happens magically. So first thing is we're going to go over to Network. Click on Network, click on Interfaces, click on our interface, and then click Edit. And we're going to scroll down. And we need to have a DNS server here. And so here I've put in the Google DNS server 8.8.8.8. Then once you do that, click Save. And then what will happen is you will lose your connection to your server. And so what you have to do is go back to your router. Then find the new IP address of your server, because it will have changed. Next, what you want to do is make sure you have PuTTY installed, because we're going to be using it a few times in this tutorial. And then you want to make sure you have all your updates. So check your updates, install any updates before you start this, because not having all the updates installed can cause this to fail. The last thing that we need is Openmediavault Extras installed. Where you can find that is at openmediavaultextras.org. And then all you're going to do is copy this line and then paste it into PuTTY, and then go from there. Now we're going to check out a few other things that are a little different than most setups that we have to change in order to have Dockstarter actually work. Dockstarter instead of Dockstarter. This is the part that was sort of frustrating and took me a few days to find out. So go down to User and click on User. And here I have a user set up already. And the groups that are currently just the users group. Now if we go back to Dockstarter, you'll see here that it has a couple requirements. And so one is that it has to have a non-root user with sudo permissions. So if we go to Openmediavault, here you can see all my user is in the users group, and so we need to add it to the sudo group. And also one other thing. So we click on our user, so it's highlighted, click on Edit, and there's our user. We want to make sure it has a password. Then click on Groups and scroll down. And so we need to add in two things. So one is SSH, because we have to use PuTTY, and then the other one is sudo. And then click Save, and then Apply, and Yes. So now adding the password, the sudo, and the SSH, if you don't do that, this will not work and you will be very frustrated for days on end. You've been warned. Next we need to go down to Shared Folders, and we need to make sure that we have 3 shared folders. Although once we get this set up, you can see that you can make your folders any way you want, because how Dockstarter actually sets up the folders uses sort of a different way of doing it than what we, or at least I, normally do in Openmediavault. So in the future you might want to change how your folders are set up so Dockstarter can do it automatically and there's less hassle for you. But this is the way we're doing it for right now. And then one other thing here, you notice I have the extra installed reset perms. Why we need this is that sometimes the Dockers reset some of the permissions. And so we're going to change those right now, just to make sure everybody's on the same page to start out with. And so if you don't know where reset perms is, I'll show you where that is right now. So after you have OMB extras installed, you'll have extra plugins. Click on plugins, scroll down to near the bottom, and there's a reset perms, and click on that and then install. And so basically reset perms allows you to reset the permissions on a folder when not through the command line, so basically from the GUI. And why we need to do that again is because sometimes Dockers change permissions on folders, so then we have to go unchange them later. Now we're going to go back to the user group, and then you see there's a button up here that says Settings. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to enable home directory, and then we have to change where we want that to go in the line below. So first we click on that and enable, and then we get to pick a place. If you leave this at none, what will happen is it will place this on your boot disk, and your boot disk will fill up really quickly. I don't suggest doing that. I suggest putting it in one of the folders that's on a disk outside of your boot disk. So here we're just going to put it in app data, but you can put it in either one of these, and then click Save. Now to check this, we can go to our Samba shares, and in our app data folder there should be a folder called Jeff now. So let's take a look. So here we are. On our Nook. We have 3 folders, the 3 folders we saw before. We go into app data, and now you can see there is a folder named Jeff. And so that is where Dockstarter is going to put the majority of things, and we're going to actually, just for the sake of making it easy, put everything in there today, even things like movies and music and so on and so forth. So now we're to the point where we can actually install Dockstarter, and so let's do that now. So we're going to open up PuTTY. Now all we need to do is put in the host name of our computer, or IP address. And so if we look over here, it's 192.168.188. And then open. Then log in as your user. So me, it is Jeff. Hit enter. Put in your user password. Hit enter. So now we're on the command line, and so what we're going to do first is copy this and then paste it there. And so how you do that is you simply highlight it, copy in Windows, and then just right click in PuTTY, and then it will paste it. Then hit enter. Then our password again, and then enter, and it will start downloading that. Click yes to or Y to install it. So once that's done, we're going to copy the second line here and then paste that into PuTTY and then hit enter. And so this part will take quite a while, so you can go have a cup of coffee. So once that's done, we're going to type in sudo reboot to reboot the system. So when we do that, PuTTY is going to lose connection with the computer or with the server as it's restarting. Just hit OK. And then we're going to have to log back into PuTTY. And then what you need to do is go back to your OMV and just hit the refresh button so everything comes up new here. Otherwise, you're going to be wondering why your machine is frozen, but it's not really frozen. It just needs to be refreshed. Next, we need to log back into PuTTY. And if we go back to Dockstarter, so the final thing that we need to do from this page is type in sudo ds, and so let's do that right now. And this will actually start Dockstarter. So hit enter, put in your password, and then here you will get this sudo unable to execute user local bin/ds. And so what this is an error. We need to change the noexec file with nano. And so this noexec causes problems in many different things like Plex, OpenVPN, it causes a problem. Also Nextcloud, it causes a problem. And so in my future videos, what I'm going to do is when we set up the server, we're just going to take that out. But for right now, I'm going to show you how to do it. So first, exit this. And so we're going to log back in as root. And then our server name, or server password, excuse me. And where you can find more information about this is if you go to the OMV guide, you'll see right here, this is the file system environmental variable section. And so you can copy this here. So this guide is for OMV4, so we actually have to do things a little differently because I'm on OMV5. But if you're on OMV4, then first you'll do this. You'll edit the noexec, and then you're going to put in OMV make config fstab. For OMV5, we have to do things a little differently. So for both versions of OMV, we need to copy this, paste that into PuTTY, and then it opens up Nano. And so now we're going to hit F6, and that will bring in the search. And so in search, we're going to type in MNTENT, and that will get us to the right section. Hit enter. And so here now you can see we're in MNTNT, and we need to go down. We don't need this yellow section. We need to go down to this white section. And here you can see there is the noexec that we need to eliminate. So we arrow down a little farther, put our cursor on the N, and then start hitting delete. And then once we get to the U, we need to stop. And then at the bottom here are the commands. And so the little arrow pointing up means hit the control button. So we're going to hit Control X. And then we're going to hit Y to save. And then hit enter. If you get any type of error when you're using PuTTY and you're using Nano, more than likely is you've added a space somewhere. And if it says error line 1 or line 2, more than likely you've added a space at the beginning of that Nano with Nano, excuse me. And so you have to go back and delete that using PuTTY and then using Nano to get back into that configuration file. So now we're simply going to type in sudo ds to get this running. So here it says it's unable to execute because permission denied. And so what's happened is in the installation, some of the permissions have been changed. So if we go back to Openmediavault, we go down to shared folders, reset permissions, and so we're simply going to reset permissions on our folders. And then once you've done that, click Save. And so let's go back to PuTTY and we'll try that again. So the mistake I've done now is I've logged in as root, and we actually have to log in as our user to run this program. So close that. Log back in as your user. Hit enter. And so now we're going to type in sudo ds, hit enter, and our password, and then hit enter. So at this point, what I realized is that I had to reinstall Dockstarter, which is super simple. Just go through those same steps again, because for some reason when we changed those permissions, it stopped working. And so once we reinstalled it, then we did the sudo ds, and it works. So now we can start setting up Dockstarter. And so we're just going to be using the tab key and the enter key for the most part. So tab to OK, hit enter for setup and start applications. And we're going to do full setup. And then we're only going to do a few Dockers just for example today, but you can add in a whole bunch. You could actually fill up your disk. I've managed to do that if you install everything. So let's just scroll down and pick a few. And so you just use your arrow down key. And so we'll pick Handbrake. And so here you see Ouroboros. And so what this does, it automatically updates your Dockers for you like other programs we've used in the past. This one just has more options. And as you can see, lots of programs. We already have Portainer installed, so we're going to undo that. Let's do QBitTorrent and maybe Radar, and that's good enough for now. So that is 3 different things we're going to be installing. So tab to OK, hit OK, enter for OK. And so here you can either purge your variables for disabled apps or not. We're just going to leave this as no in case we want to install other things later. And so now what it's going to be doing is going through the different variables for the different programs, and we're going to be able to leave them as is or change them. So we're going to look at those individually. And so how you would change this is, so it says, would you like to keep these? Simply tab over to no. And then it's going to give you different options. So here we can keep current on the network mode. So we want to change this one because we want this to be inside of one of our shared folders, either our app data, our downloads, or our media folder. So we're going to go down, tab down to new, hit enter. And so we want to go over to Openmediavault. Go over to our shared folders, and then hit this down arrow, hit columns, hit absolute path. Make that a little bit wider. And go back to PuTTY. And so for us, we're going to want our output for our folder into the media folder. So we're backspace. And so what we did is we put in our absolute path for our Docker, so serve/dev-disk-by-label-1tb/media. And then we want the output of Handbrake into the movies folder. And then hit OK. And so it says it's not a valid path. Would you like to create it? Yes. And so it's created it. And we can keep our ports. And so we want to change the watch folder also. So we're going to arrow down to enter new. And same thing again. And so here we ended up putting it in the downloads folder, and then we created a watch folder. Tab, do OK, hit enter. Yes, you want to create it. It's created. Good. And so Ouroboros, you can keep all these. It will basically, so what it will do is install or check for a new version of your Dockers every evening and install that and delete the old one if you need to. So just hit enter for yes. And then for QBitTorrent, we can keep all these. So we're going to hit yes. And so for Radar, we're going to keep that. So hit yes. And so we're not going to enable a VPN right now. So we're just going to hit yes. But if we do, this is where we would start to change it. So this section is the global section. So if you're going to be adding things in the future, you want to change all these to the specific thing or area that you want it to be, and then it will go much quicker to actually install things, because instead of changing everything every time, it's automatically populated for you with the things that you put in. And so for right now, we're just going to change a couple things. So it's going to give suggestions. So we're going to use America, New York, since that's where I live. And we're going to use OMV Nook. And that is correct. And we have to change our group ID to 100. And we're going to use that config file. And we're going to change our downloads to downloads. And this is where you can see where you can actually save a lot of time once you have this set up. And then finally, after you have all the different folders set up, you're going to run Docker Compose, and then it will install them all and do some of the basic setup for us. And again, this is going to take a long time, so go get another cup of coffee. Okay, once that's done installing, then you'll see it says QBitTorrent done, Handbrake done, Ouroboros done, Radar done. So now what we can do is go to Portainer and take a look there and see what's happened. So if we go to OMV Extras, we scroll down to Open Portainer. We click on Local, and then we click on Images. So right here, you can see there are our 5 containers running. One is Portainer, which was already running. And if we those are our images, excuse me. And if we go to containers, we can see that they're all running now. So let's take a look at one. So we'll go to 5800, which is for Handbrake. So we'll copy our IP address, all of our IP address. Paste that into a new window, hit backspace, :5800. And there's Handbrake, and it's working, and you can use it right now if you wanted to. Other programs, so let's take Radar, which is at 7878. Hit backspace, :7878. And when that loads up, you can see here on this, there's 3 things that need to be fixed yet. And so from there on in, it's just like setting up regular radar. And so that is using Dockstarter, and like I said, there are a lot of little details in there that can go wrong and probably will go wrong to start out with, but if you pay attention, you should get it through pretty quickly. Once it's set up, you can use it any number of times to add and delete programs, but it's definitely worth the effort to learn. If you especially are building a new server, you can get sort of everything organized all at once. And that's it for today. Hope you found this video helpful, and make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you next time. And if you have any requests for any videos, make sure you leave them in the comments down below. Bye-bye.